Hi everybody. So it's week 7, which is crazy. But very quickly, I just want to talk about 2 things that went really well this week. Number 1, on Monday, I tried out one of my first social justice activities that I created. What it is you take the story of the Sneetches by Dr. Seuss. Yeah. You read the story and talk about like race and how that story like parallels race relations in America. So this social justice activity was meant to get at discussions about race and discrimination and prejudice and power. So you read the story of the Sneetches, and if you haven't read the story of the Sneetches, very quickly, it's just about these Sneetches, these bird-like creatures that live on a beach. Some have stars, some don't, and so the Starbellies basically they set themselves aside as the best, and they have access to all the best things, and they leave the plain-belly Sneetches out to dry. And so the Star Maker comes to the beach, and he charges the plain bellies a fee to put stars on their bellies. And then once that happens, the Starbellies are like, well, we're still the best Sneetches around. Well, how are we going to distinguish ourselves? And so the Star Maker, again, charges the Starbellies a fee to remove the stars off their bellies. And then all of a sudden, they reset the standard and say, okay, the best Sneetches in town are the Sneetches without stars on their belly. And so it goes back and forth, in and out of the star machine, until they spend all their money, and then they can't tell, who was originally a Starbelly and who was originally a plain belly. And then at the end, they just decided that a Sneetch is a Sneetch no matter what you have on your belly. So what it is, I read the story, and then we discussed like how the themes in the story maybe parallel race relations, whether or not this story is relevant in America today, as opposed to when Dr. Seuss wrote the story. And actually, Dr. Seuss, whose actual name is, his first name is escaping me, but his last name is Geisel. I want to say Thomas, but don't quote me on that, but his last name is definitely Geisel. He wrote the story because he grew up in a Jewish family. He is Jewish, and he was picked on because he was Jewish, and so he wrote the story to kind of get at that subject of prejudice and racism. And so I, would just ask the question, whether the story is relevant today as opposed to when the story was written. Is this a sign of America years ago, or do these things still happen? And then I introduced the activity hypnosis, which is basically, it's a creative drama activity where you stand, there's partners, and you stand about an arm's length apart, and then one person holds their hand up to someone's face like this. And the other person, the person holding up their hand can move their hand around, and the person who's being hypnotized has to follow. And so we did that, and then I divided them into groups, the Starbellies and the plain bellies, and they did a group hypnosis where the Starbellies started, and they, each put their hands toward the plain bellies, and they moved their hands around like so, hypnotizing the plain bellies. And then the plain bellies were going to do the same thing, but before they did, I kind of had like a 2-second huddle with the Starbellies and told them not to follow the plain bellies. And so as the plain bellies were moving their hands and Starbellies weren't following, of course they're like, what's going on here? And so that kind of led to discussion questions about power and who has power and the illusions of power. And it led to a lot of great discussions that the residents had. And some, of course, there were some doubt whether or not, or question whether or not this story directly parallels race relations in America today. Sometimes it's hard to see that or know what it looks like. But then a student, a black student, shared that he had recently been through an episode where he was discriminated against based on his race. And for one, afterwards I thanked him for being open enough to share that story. And two, I think the value of hearing that story is that, it put a face to what we were talking about. We had been talking about, 20 minutes or so about power and who has power and the illusion of power and race and all that kind of thing. And then, he raised his hand and shared that story. And I think it really brought everything home to say, yeah, we've come a long way, but this country was, founded, on racism, you know, with slavery and all that kind of stuff. We were founded in a country where people were treated as less than human, treated like property simply because of the color of their skin. And so him sharing that story, I think, really helped to make it three-dimensional, and that this has a face, and that racism and discrimination and prejudice have a face, and that we're talking about experiences that people have gone through and still are going through. And so I think that was a very good program. I heard a lot of positive feedback from the residents, from the CAs, and from my supervisor that the program went very well. Obviously, there are ways to improve it. I went back and added some discussion questions that I think were really good, that just kind of came to me on the spot, that weren't written down on the instruction sheet. So I went back and added those questions, and yeah, just made some more notes just to help the facilitator, whoever's going to be facilitating this in the future, know what to do and maybe what to expect given the discussion. And so that went very well. And in the staff meeting, at our staff meeting this week, we are plugging away at the CA programming guide. One CA put together a letter of just a sample letter if CAs want to partner with other people on campus. And so just in case you may not know the person that you're talking to, just like an introductory letter saying, hi, my name is so-and-so, I'm doing a program about such and such, and I would really appreciate it if you would come and present or guest speak at this program. And so she put together a sample letter or sample email to send. Obviously, given the program and date and time and all that stuff, you just fill that information in. So she did that. And then another CA is working on a marketing piece, how to market your program. And they actually came up with like 20 good ways to market your program, which I think is going to be very good. They're still putting together the details as far as like exactly what to do for each number. Like there's like Facebook, like sidewalk chalk, window paint, all kinds of creative things. And then we also talked about assessment again, and we got really, really far with the assessment part. We looked at our cornerstones now and the types of programming that would fit under each cornerstone, and we said, okay, how can we assess whether or not what we're doing is hitting this cornerstone? And so we just basically just plugged through all 5 of them and just wrote down on a whiteboard, okay, these are some possible ways to assess this cornerstone that are both measurable and attainable. Something, wow, where'd that come from? I wonder where that came from. So, yeah, because we wanted to make sure that whatever assessment idea that we came up with, that it would be easy for us to keep track of as CAs or as the director, assistant director, so forth. And then also creating assessment tools that are easy to share with others, easy to maybe put in a document or put on a graph. So things like survey questions, maybe number of service hours, how many students are involved in activities on campus, how many students are in a leadership role in an organization on campus, things like that. And then pre and post type things, like at the beginning of the semester, how many people do you know in your lodge or feel that you know, and then at the end of the semester, given all these programs we've done for community building, how many people do you feel you know, how many people do you feel you connect with, things like that. And so we wrote all those things down, and so now our director is going to kind of like get at the nuts and bolts exactly and put it into the format that he already laid out. And so I feel that was a very, very productive staff meeting. It went really well. We got a lot of great ideas put down on paper. And so naturally I'll keep you posted as far as what that's going to look like and how that's going to go. At the moment they're talking about, which I think is a good idea, I'm having a separate kind of survey for each cornerstone. So there are 5 cornerstones, and so creating a survey, just like a maybe 5 or 6 question survey that will be administered after the program to say, okay, this program was meant to get at global and cultural awareness. So here's the survey for global and cultural awareness. And so it would have questions that are specific to that cornerstone. And so I think that'd be a very good idea. And so, yeah, that's what I've been doing this week. So, yeah, can't wait to read what you guys have been up to. And yeah, great discussion this week, by the way, about the professionalism stuff. So just wanted to put that out there. So yeah, see ya.